Hello, everybody. UFC 299 is finally here. It's in Miami. It's going down tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, ESPN Plus pay-per-view. This one should be spectacular. Let's get right into it. I want to start in the prelims because on the prelims, there are tons of great fights. And the one that has stood out for me leading up to this fight is two top heavyweight contenders. That's Jolton Almeida taking on Curtis Blades. They're both around the same age, but Curtis Blades is ranked above Jolton Almeida, and Almeida's coming off of two good wins against Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Derek Lewis, two veterans of the heavyweight division, and Curtis Blades is coming off of a knockout loss against Sergey Pavlovich. We know before then he had the fight against Tom Aspinall. He technically got a knockout, but I don't really consider it that because Aspinall suffered a major injury. But this fight's really exciting to me because it's two guys that have very similar styles. Both guys want to take you down. They excel on the ground. They can bang a little bit when they're standing up, and I would favor Curtis Blades when they're standing up in this, like on the feet. So this fight, although Blades is a little bit better of a stand-up fighter, Jolton Almeida, even though his last fight against Derek Lewis wasn't the most exciting fight, I'm still going to go with him for the win to win this fight, just because the guy hasn't lost since, I believe, 2018. He's won 7 straight fights now in the UFC. He's been totally dominant. Besides the last fight, didn't happen in spectacular fashion, but he's 20-2, and 18 of those wins have came by way of knockout by way of finish for that, and he just always finds a way. And to me, Almeida is just the better athlete in this fight, so that's why I'm gonna favor him on this one. But moving on to the main card, the first fight on this main card is really just an unbelievable one. It's Song Yadong taking on Petr Yan, the former UFC bantamweight champion of the world. And in this fight, Yadong is a very close underdog. The odds that I'm looking at have him at plus 120 to minus 140 Petr Yan. And this is really a veteran of the sport in Yan, who's 31, going against a younger 26-year-old in Song Yadong. But the new version of Song Yadong that we've seen as of late is a guy that looks like could be a former or future title challenger, because the way we've seen him recently, he totally dominated Chris Gutierrez, and he knocked out Ricky Simone in his last 2 fights last year. So he's looked very dominant. And Petr Yan, since he had the Aljamain Sterling kind of situation in that first fight with the knee, he's only won 1 time, and he's lost his last 3 fights. He lost the second fight versus Aljo, and then he lost against Sean O'Malley, which, to be honest, I thought he won in the moment. I thought he won that fight, to be honest. And then he didn't just lose to Merab a couple months ago. He totally got dominated, destroyed. That was one of Merab's best performances at that point. And so, to me, going into this fight, Petr Yan needs to win more. If Petr Yan doesn't win this fight, his days of being a contender are far gone, because he's hanging on by a thread. I believe he's ranked number 4 in the UFC bantamweight division, and he really, if he doesn't win this fight, he's not going to get another title shot, and I don't even think he's going to get another top 10 fight, and he's going to be ranked, or he should be ranked outside the top 10, because I think it's even kind of nice and gracious of the UFC to rank him in the top 5 right now, because the guy hasn't won a fight since 2021, since he beat Corey Sandhagen for the then interim belt. This guy hasn't won recently. He did look good, as I mentioned, against Sean O'Malley, but I'm going to go with Song Yadong to win this fight. I think he is going to establish himself, as I mentioned, as a contender, and I really think it's his time. He has an inch height advantage in this fight. The reach is even across the board between the two. But yeah, I think Song Yadong, he's just really quick, really fast, and I think this will be a good fight to see where he's at, because if you can get through a Petr Yan who might be past his prime at this point, but still former UFC champion, then that means that he could be a champion himself, Yadong that is, in the future. But moving on, the second fight of the night is one that I've gone back and forth with the last couple of weeks, and like most of these fights on this card, they're all toss-ups to me. Literally all 5 fights on this main card, I could really see anyone winning either of the fights. Of the 5 on the main card. But getting to this welterweight matchup, it's Gilbert Burns, who's a top 5 ranked guy, taking on number 12, Jack Della Maddalena, who right now has won 14 straight fights, and he's on quite the tear. He's the favorite in this fight at -160 to +135, Gilbert Burns. Burns hasn't fought since May of last year. He lost a short notice fight that he took against Bilal Muhammad, and Jack Della Maddalena beat Kevin Holland back in September, and he really is just establishing himself like Sung Yadong as a young up-and-comer and contender for him in the welterweight division. If he wins this fight, I think he should be ranked in the top 5, and I think that he is right behind Bilal Muhammad and Shavkat Rakhmonov to challenge for Leon Edwards' title in the future. And it's really just crazy that we have this great of a fight on the second fight on the main card. Gilbert Burns, he's 35 years old. He's shown weakness as of late. This is a fight in the state that he trains in Florida. As we know, he trains not too far at Killcliff. But I'm going to go with Jack Della to get the job done. I've liked Jack's pace, and it seems like, and just his striking overall. I think he's a really good striker, and I think unless Gilbert Burns tries to take this fight to the mat, I think Jack Della is going to have a lot of success in this fight, and I think he's going to win. I just think Gilbert Burns, he's not quick enough, he's not going to be fast enough, and I just don't think, unless this gets into a war type of fight like we saw Burns in with Khamzat Chimaev a couple years ago, then he can succeed in the later rounds. But I think Jack Della is going to get the job done here. But moving on, the third fight from the top is another welterweight fight. It's the always fun, always exciting. Kevin Holland is taking on MVP Michael Venom Page in his UFC debut. The former Bellator contender is 21-2. He's the underdog at +110. The -130, Kevin Holland is the favorite at -130 in this fight. And this is just a really interesting matchup, because if this fight stays on the feet, this can be an unreal striking battle. Both guys are long, rangy. They're about the same height, about the same reach, but Kevin Holland is better on the ground. I don't think he's going to use that, because I think it's a big fight night. He's just going to want to stand and bang in. I think MVP is going to win his UFC debut, and I think he's going to quickly establish himself in the welterweight division, and maybe we see an England versus England matchup with the champ Leon Edwards versus MVP in the future. But don't get me wrong, Kevin Holland is no easy fight. He's not an easy out by any stretch of the imagination. So I think this will be a great fight. And even so, I think this fight has potential to be the best fight of the night here at UFC 299 tonight. And I really do think that this is just really competitive. It's really a close call. But moving on to the co-main event of the evening, it's Dustin Poirier, the former interim UFC lightweight champion, taking on the number 12 ranked Benoit Saint Denis. BSD is on a 4-fight win streak in the UFC. He's looking to establish himself as a contender himself, but Dustin Poirier, although he got knocked out in July against Justin Gaethje for the UFC, for the BMF title, I do think that Dustin Poirier will get the job done here. I just think he's going to be too much for BSD. He's such an elite striker, and he puts so much pace and pressure on opponents, and it makes them just so hard. And I think BSD is going to be a contender in the future, but just the step up in competition is just so far, and I just think it's a little too much for BSD at this point. Dustin Poirier has been in so many 5-round wars, so many big fights against big opponents on big stages, and BSD's never gone 5 rounds, so I think it favors Dustin on the back end of this fight if it goes deeper in the later rounds. And I just can't believe that Dustin Poirier is this big of an underdog. He's right now, I see him at plus 175 to minus 215 of Benoit Saint Denis. I don't remember Dustin being this big of an underdog in a long time. He doesn't deserve to be that. I don't think, unlike Gilbert Burns, I don't think that Dustin Poirier is on his way out right now. I don't think his time's over just yet. And I think he's going to just remind people why he is, along with Gaethje, one of the most violent strikers in this division. And I think we'll see that come Saturday night. But the main event, the one that we've all been waiting for, a rematch back of the fight we saw a couple years ago. That one was in the Apex. We know how it ended. It ended by, on the record books, it says Chito by TKO, but we know that's not how it played out. And by still giving credit for Chito for finishing that fight, if you want to say, you can make excuses, but it's not an excuse. It's a real thing that happened. Sean O'Malley did hurt his leg in that fight. His foot was hurt. There's nothing he could have done about that in that moment. So I don't think he's undefeated like Sean likes to say, but still that fight didn't get the justice it deserved. We didn't see the full fight play out. The leg kicks by Chito were elite. And since then, I just think Sean O'Malley has gotten to a level and such an elite level that Chito just hasn't reached. Sean has really risen. Obviously, he's now the bantamweight champion of the world in the UFC, and Chito since has lost a couple fights along the way. But I just think that Sean's improved his striking. He's improved every part of his game. He's shown he can be in wars like the one we saw against Petr Yan. He can fight a wrestler like we saw when he beat Aljo a couple months ago and knocked him out. He's been in so many different situations now. I just feel like this is Sean's moment. This is Sean's division. This is the Sean O'Malley era of the UFC. I truly believe that. The odds suggest that too. O'Malley's near a minus 280 favorite to a plus 220 Marlo Chito Vera underdog in this fight. And I think that Sean O'Malley is going to knock Chito out. I'm going to say in the 4th round. I think it's going to be late. I think that the first round or two could be a little bit of a standoff because the fighters know each other so well. And then I think when it gets in the later rounds, I think he's such an elite athlete. He's so quick. He's so rangy. The way he moves around. He's such an elite fighter. And I think this is his moment. This is his first title defense. And I really think that there's not really that many fighters besides Sean O'Malley that shows up the way he does in the big moments. Every big moment Sean O'Malley has on pay-per-view, he makes the most of it. He gets the job done. And I think he's going to do just that come Saturday night. But thanks to everybody for tuning in. And be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.